Hi, welcome to Free Exchange. I'm Howard Wall, the director of the Hammond Institute for Free Enterprise here at Lindenwood University. And I'm here with my colleague Rachel Douchant, and we're going to discuss the recent partnership that's been set up between Lindenwood University and the City of Ferguson, Missouri, that has seen some unrest, to say the least, in the last few months. So welcome.
Thanks, I'm glad to be here.
Now, we started this partnership, and it's kind of spread a little bit from the City of Ferguson through some things more broadly in North County. But
Right.
and it's been what, a couple of months, 3 months maybe, since we started kind of working on it. But can you tell us a little bit about the genesis of this whole project, because it started out very modestly and then really expanded?
Yeah, so after the grand jury decision came down in November, and of course many buildings burned at that time, within about a month I became aware of the fact that the public perception of Ferguson was very different from the reality. In other words, there was a lot of destruction that went on over the course of 2 nights, and it was all along 2 streets, but it was by no means widespread. It didn't last, and everyone was trying to get back to normal, but the perception in the public was that Ferguson is still a very dangerous place, and I don't want to go eat there or shop there or anything like that. And so, of course, the entrepreneurs were taking a terrible hit. The economy of Ferguson was taking a terrible hit. And so my first thought was just that I would shop and eat in Ferguson and then just tweet that out over the Liberty and Ethics Center website. And I started a hashtag Ferguson favorites. And the idea was just to say, hey, you know, I'm here at the brewery, or I'm here at Ferguson Burgers, or wherever I am, and this is delicious and I'm having a great time, so that people would sort of see that life was returning to normal in the city. And so that's how it began. What ensued was that Ferguson hired sort of a crack PR team, you know, a crisis team, to handle the situation. And they ended up seeing the hashtag and contacting me. And so they wanted to have a lunch with us and a meeting with us and figure out some other things that they needed help with. First and foremost, what was initially, or what has always been just a normal city hall for a normal town, was now being inundated with hundreds of media requests.
Right, and in the meantime, like parallel to your efforts, our other colleague, David Rosenwasser, who's the head of the DeRee Center for Entrepreneurship, had already come up with an idea to have an entrepreneurship mindset course that he could offer in Ferguson or at North County, and was looking to plan that out. So it was all kind of coming together. That
one was very serendipitous, because we had actually already been developing that just to have in general and to offer on our St. Charles campus. But when we started chatting about what we could do in Ferguson, he said, well, we have a North County campus and we could offer this on scholarship. And then once we got the word out that we wanted to do that, Ameristar, of course, donated $25,000 to put somewhere between 60 and 100 students through the course over the next year. And so and it'll be there in North County for Ferguson residents who are, of course, adults improving or starting new businesses.
So it's a multifaceted partnership, and it's probably more facets to come as we go through. Can you tell me recap a couple of the major ones? Yeah,
so first we provided some interns for the PR team, and really for the City Hall in general, because they were just overwhelmed. And so that's been a great opportunity for our students to be a part of something at a very historical moment. And then we also have a wonderful documentarian here at Lindenwood. We have, of course, this beautiful HD TV station. So the students are working on short documentaries, public service announcements, and things like that to aid the city. The Criminal Justice Department is starting a conversation that they hope will lead to the recruitment of minorities into law enforcement. We've started already with conversations just between the criminal justice students and the Black Student Union students, just to kind of get a sense of what's at stake in that conversation and in the stigmas that exist. So I think that's an important conversation that we need to have and move forward with. We're organizing right now a community day at the Ferguson Community Center, April 25th. And that's a big deal, because the community center is beautiful. It's beautifully refurbished, and it's a very good deal for community members. But it opened up 1 month after the Mike Brown case, and so it was completely obscured and by all the media circus. And so there's a real gem there, and we want to bring in. We have volunteers lined up to tutor. We have faculty offering sessions for parents and community members as well. There's going to be some fun stuff, some athletic clinics and so forth. And I hope that'll be a really fun day and a positive day for the community to get some needs met, but also just to have a really great time and have something positive.
Now, one of the things that struck me, it wasn't necessarily a surprise, but it's always nice when it happens, was when we kind of put the word out and started talking to our colleagues university-wide, that students and faculty alike were, there was no problem. They stepped, well, what can we do? I have this idea, I have that idea.
Yeah.
And just
I'm concerned that I may have too many volunteers for Community Day, make sure I have jobs for them all to do. Everybody's very gung-ho about doing whatever they can. And of course, many of our students here and our faculty members here grew up in North County. They grew up in Ferguson. They went to Riverview Gardens or Ferguson Florissant School District. And these are our neighbors and our families. So
right, and it was, it was largely due to the students when we were putting the internships together that a week before classes started. But they were there, and they said yes. They rearranged their schedules. They really wanted to step in and get an opportunity and to be involved somehow.
That's right, and they really rose to the occasion. And I was also very pleased to see how many students were interested in the summer internships as well. We have a list of over 30 students who are getting their resumes together now to be vetted. We want to put together a dozen to 15 or so interns for this summer. So, and that may be a program that goes on as long as the city needs it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing that, of course, was very impressive was the university itself, the university administration. They were supportive as we were going along and doing our things, and we were keeping them updated. But we had given some apparently modest proposals for the university to offer scholarships to, say, the top students from North County high schools. And then President Evans accepted all of our modest proposals. We wanted him to pick one.
That's right.
I hope he's not watching this.
It was wonderful. It was a wonderful surprise, and totaling almost $1 million. 25 high school students from around the North County area, all 5 school districts included. And one of the things that's really hitting me over time is how much the projects that we're doing are not going to benefit just the city of Ferguson. Not only do we have the scholarships going out, but Ferguson Community Day is going to be advertised at all 5 schools as well. Everyone's welcome, and it's all very, very close. They can get there really quickly, and the same is true for the economic emphasis. If we can encourage the economy of Ferguson and Dellwood, that's a boon to everyone in the surrounding areas.
Right, and this gets back to things that we've discussed. That it was Ferguson. Some of the things that arose out of this were really parts of problems that are problems in North County, right?
Yes.
Not necessarily only in Ferguson, and in fact, some of the problems are not really in Ferguson.
Yeah, Ferguson actually hadn't had
different.
A homicide for 12 years. That's one of the reasons why, you have the debate over how long the body was in the street. One of the reasons is that this wasn't a police department that's dealing with a lot of homicides. And that's a little bit of the media perception problem, is that if you actually just go a few minutes in a different direction and you're in North City, you're in a place where something like that is much more common. So it's kind of a hard thing, I think, for the people in the city of Ferguson to be depicted as kind of the poster boy for America's racial issues, because they think of themselves as not perfect by any means, but a more progressive town than many, that might be just 5 or 10 miles away. And so I think it is frustrating for them to, now the name Ferguson is sort of synonymous with our problems, which are very real. I'm not denying those, but I'm just saying of all the towns in St. Louis, it wasn't necessarily the best representative.
Right, and we've often talked about this. We're trying to decide, perhaps something like this, the shooting and then the aftermath, was going to happen somewhere at some time. And it's unfortunate that Ferguson was the place that it happened, but that maybe Ferguson has a better chance of recovering from the aftermath.
Yeah, that actually occurred to me as the process went on, and I started seeing the efforts that are being made towards recovery and addressing deep-seated problems that are everywhere. They're nationwide in all the major urban areas and some rural areas as well. And so what I realized over time is, it could be helpful to have a community, if the eyes of the nation are going to be on a particular town, it could be helpful to have a town that is more socioeconomically diverse, it's a little more racially diverse, and they may have the wherewithal and the community resources to actually rise to the occasion and make some interesting and creative kinds of approaches to these problems. Where if you were to go over to North City, which is struggling at such a deeper level with poverty and crime, I don't know what they would really draw upon to try and do something innovative about any of these problems that have been brought up. So in a strange way, perhaps if it had to happen somewhere, which I think it did, it was inevitably going to happen somewhere with the level of incarceration of young black males and the crime levels in our inner cities. This was definitely going to happen. Maybe there was something providential about happening in a city that had those sorts of resources. So I'm hoping that we can be a part of that, be a part of the healing process.
Well, it's in some ways it's been interesting to be involved because I actually had not been to Ferguson before any of this because
you're not a townie like me.
I'm not from
you're from
St.
New York
Louis originally.
Yeah.
But then to do the hashtag Ferguson favorites, I went over and looked around, and I saw one that was looked like it would been a relatively booming area, very nice,
charming downtown.
But that there were most places were boarded up. Window to protect their windows or because their windows were smashed. And then another part, actually that's kind of the poorer business district, I think, is where most of the buildings that burned down were burned. And in Delwood, which is actually, also saw, I think, I don't even know if it was, if a majority of the buildings that were burned were outside of the city limits of Ferguson or not, but it was. It was.
I
not.
know Delwood saw some, and we're trying not to forget them, right? To include them in the hashtag campaign. And one of the interesting things that came out of all this is the beautiful boards that people painted, a lot of messages of hope, and the ribbons hung on the fencing and so forth. It's been kind of a neat thing to observe. And the same thing happened down on Grand Street, down on South Grand, where a lot of the windows were knocked down, and really beautiful messages of racial reconciliation and things painted on the boards. So that was a touching thing.
Now we've been sounding very, kind of hopeful about things, but
it's been a tough row to hoe, hasn't it?
And I think it's going to be a lot tougher as we go ahead because, as we see, a lot of the businesses in Ferguson were, small businesses, not flush with lots of capital behind them,
big
big
shop,
savings.
A bakery, single owners, not chains.
So when something like this hits, they don't have the savings or the backup plan, and even insurance often didn't cover the damage because it doesn't cover the damage from riots.
Right.
So unless you have reserves to handle situations like this, and you count on your insurance company for your reserves, and if it just doesn't work out, then you're in real trouble. You cannot. And then it's, can you even start up again? Right. You've already poured everything into starting the business, and then something like this happens, and you have to kind of start from scratch and find funds to get going.
There have been a number of attempts to deal with this problem. Of course, we have GoFundMe, which is the famous story of Natalie's Bakery. She was able to raise so much money, she gave some away. The I Heart Ferguson store, which has been selling the I Heart Ferguson yard signs and T-shirts and sweatshirts, and I see them all over now, which is wonderful. They have donated all of their proceeds to business owners who need windows fixed and need work done. And then the Urban League, I was just at the Urban League dinner last week, and they've put together, I think, about $600,000 that they've been able to start, thoughtfully doling out to businesses to restart. And I'm sure there are others as well. I know that the United Way has been very thoughtful about how it's going to operate in Ferguson and a lot of its different associated groups. And so there have been a lot of efforts. I think my concern is with the consumers, right? You can open businesses, but you need people to go there, and you need people to have the confidence. And we were gaining confidence there for a little while, and then when the 2 police officers were shot, I think that was a real step backwards.
Oh yes, it's difficult to it was quite
another
blow to the
blow.
reputation
right.
of the safety when policemen get shot in front of the police station.
Exactly. And so it's sort of attracting, now some problems that's making it even harder. And I know it's very frustrating for the people in the business district. I mean, these are people just trying to make a living and live their lives, and we want to support them and be good neighbors to them. So hopefully, some of this positive energy and getting people in from the greater St. Louis area will pick up, and we'll be able to support these businesses and keep them open. I know the Quick Trip has donated the Quick Trip that burned down in August. So that was the original burning building sort of image that everyone saw. That has been donated to the Urban League. And they're opening up a Ferguson Center there for kind of a success center.
Well, just to throw some cold water on your story of this donation, it's because their Quick Trip was marginally profitable before.
Oh, I know they weren't going to reopen.
And then they decided that the land was virtually worthless to them.
Yes.
So they gave it away.
Yeah, no, that's true.
So it's an indication of, and I don't know if replacing well, we'll talk about this after the break, more about some gloomy things. We'll see what we can do. Thank you, and come back after the break, and we're going to continue our discussion about Ferguson, Missouri, and things that Lindenwood University has been involved in over there.
Lindenwood University. It's where you can get an education steeped in 187 years of tradition, but in tune with the needs of students of today. Lindenwood is where the liberal arts thrive. It's where young people and working adults can prepare for the next great step in their lives. Lindenwood has more than 120 degree programs from which to choose, bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, and a doctoral degree in education. Lindenwood has tradition, a sprawling modern campus, a supportive faculty known for its one-on-one attention, and personal financial aid assistance to help new students and parents feel comfortable with their college choice. Lindenwood offers the best of the St. Louis region, with a college town experience in St. Charles, Missouri. Find out why thousands are choosing Lindenwood University. Find out today. You can reach us online at www.lindenwood.edu or call 636-949-4949.
Hi, welcome back to Free Exchange. We're going to continue our discussion about Ferguson, Missouri, and what the Lindenwood University has been doing to help out the city of Ferguson to recover, and also the broader area of North County. Now, before the break, I was promising to give you some gloominess.
Well, you're an economist, so that's your job.
That's what I'm here for.
It's a melancholy science.
Yeah, and if you look at, if I'm assessing the chances, and this is really just a way of getting an idea of the challenge that the community is up against, the Quick Trip story is, I think, has some lessons. Quick Trip is a fairly large company. They have, their stores and gas stations all over the place, and their store there was burned down in the first wave of rioting back in August, and apparently it was, according to what they've said, it was kind of marginally profitable. They were going to keep it open. No plans to close it, but that once it was destroyed, it was just not worth bothering for a couple of reasons, because just the cost of reopening it, and then perhaps the future, they just weren't hopeful about the future revenue that they could get from there. So they had what they perceived as land or property that was not worth all that much, which they end up donating to the Urban League to set up a training center.
Right.
Now, as a measure of the challenge we're up against, I compare this to what Walgreens did. Right, because there was a Walgreens that wasn't burned down, but it was damaged and looted, and it was the first business to open up. I mean, they redid everything very quickly. It's a company with money. It wasn't a small business that's suffering.
And they actually had to completely redo the interior because the sprinklers turned on.
Yeah. So it was pretty quickly they spent the money and reopened, but Quick Trip, not the same resources as Walgreens, but some resources still. Wasn't worth it, and then they're giving away the land it was on.
And have you heard that more big box stores have decided maybe that they might close? in Ferguson? I had heard a rumor of that, but I don't know how true
No, I'm
it
not
is.
sure, because some of them, and the big box stores are kind of on the edges of town, not where the damage was, although some of the kind of the smaller general stores were damaged. But I haven't heard anything else. But that's the sort of thing where it's your profit margins in North County overall are not that strong, probably stronger in Ferguson before all of this happened, because it was the kind of a better off area.
Right.
And then this takes away the profit margins that you had.
Right.
And it's, you're not going to be moving necessarily somewhere else nearby in North County, just out of Ferguson, but out of North County altogether. Because Ferguson was viewed as your best bet.
Yeah, I see.
If you're
going to
locate there, that was the place, and then now that's not viable any longer. So
right.
it has ripple effects elsewhere. So it's really again, this is just a measure of the challenges that they're up against.
Right.
And like I said, the challenges are actually long-standing in North County, in the area, and in North City.
Yeah, I know we have a developer who's been trying to do a huge renewal project in North County for a long time, and I know that everyone would love it if North County was a booming economy, but I think the fear of investors is that, if we build some huge project and it fails, that's going to be dangerous. And so I know that there's been some issues with getting the money raised for his project, because there wasn't necessarily the sense that it could be supported economically in that area.
Right.
So, and that was before all of this. So I understand your point, and I think it's good to be in reality about all of that. When I heard about the Urban League building the resource center there, I thought that's going to be great for morale. The question is, what are they going to do in the center that's going to really generate, and they may do it. I think the Urban League is very much focused on economic self-reliance. And so I think that they have at least the right approach, but we'll just have to see. We'll have to see what they come up with.
Right. I mean, the long-standing problems throughout the region are, it's relatively poor schools. Some of the school districts in North County unaccredited. Yeah. And crime in parts are very high. Drug use is very high. So lots of issues that, again, we're not even going to really attempt to address. We're going to address those in discussions and so on as we go along. But we're just trying to. But it did turn out that by accident more than design, probably, our program that we've set up actually hits lots of almost all of the different areas, education, criminal justice, helping the small businesses recover, helping people become entrepreneurs.
I think that it's really right to make a distinction between an emergency, a disaster or an emergency, and a chronic problem. And I think this is a little bit of an interesting case because you have elements of both. So obviously the burning of 20 businesses is an emergency situation. We've got to come in and we've got to make sure this community doesn't end up totally spiraling down as a result of this, if we can. But what I think the national discussion has become about is the underlying chronic problems, and those are very real. And then, of course, there's a debate about what exactly is causing them, right? And so I think the Hammond Institute is actually an enviable position because, on the one hand, we have our entrepreneurship center, we have this incredible resource of the whole university, basically, that can provide all sorts of things in a disaster situation. But we also are doing intellectual work to try and address the chronic underlying problems. And I know, we just had our big spring conference last weekend, and I know we were talking the whole time about what we might discuss next year in terms of poverty and issues surrounding, whether there's a lot of debate over, is it racism, is it social pathologies, is it political in nature, is it racism that's causing the politics, and so it's complicated. And I think actually the answer is probably diverse. It's probably a lot of those things wrapped up in one.
Well, I think we're in a good position because I think we have better ideas than have been tried before.
Well, we've been trying a lot of ideas over and over again for a long time, and we haven't seen a big change.
Right.
So
I mean, as the Hammond Institute for Free Enterprise, we think that, I think in general terms, that there's been an over-reliance on government social programs as a means of ending poverty. The war on poverty has not gotten rid of poverty, and the poverty rate is higher now than it was when this war was
higher than
started.
what we feared it would happen
Yeah, it was
if
higher
we
than
didn't
even
fight
what was
the war.
feared. Yeah.
And I think that what's not taken into account, no offense, but just looking at the pure numbers, right? What's not taken into account is the reasons for the growth in that poverty, which is not just, sure, you have perverse incentives, absolutely, and you have the crowd out effect. But I think
I'm not
culturally,
sure why I'm supposed to take offense.
well, only because what I'm trying to get at more of a humanistic perspective. In other words, it's not just that the number has gone up, but that the number has gone up through cultural destruction. I mean, that's really what's occurred because of the crowd out effect, right? And so you have the state taking over areas of life that the community has traditionally handled. And you might think, oh, well, the state will be more efficient or it'll be more egalitarian. But what you forget about is that the community's attempts to handle those problems is also an important form of community solidarity. And has a lot of those fraternal societies and things like that. They have their primary purpose, which is taken over by the state, and then when they're lost, you lose all of the secondary purposes that they served, all of the networking and all of the shared values that were inculcated through those sorts of organizations. A lot of those things have just disappeared. It's one of the saddest things to me, and something that has motivated my entire career in political philosophy.
Well, I will digest what you said, and I'll be offended later,
Okay.
I assume, once I realize all of its ramifications.
Right. It's just you can look at statistics and you can see the effect, right? You can see the poverty level going up, or you can see the crime level going up, or you can see the incarceration rate going up, But then if you get into the community and you see what's going on the ground, I think it's important to see the richness of that whole picture.
Now here's another discussion. We'll just tack on the tail end here. When I see a number, I know that the number is a person.
Yeah, that's right. No, it's important to remember that. It's important to remember that. And sometimes I think just having that concrete image in our minds is really important. These are families and fathers who are sort of being replaced by the state, and that's a terrible crime, I think, against our least well-off population. And that's one of the points that I hear you making a lot when you're talking about some of our counterintuitive claims in economics, like that the minimum wage is harmful. And this is the point you're making, which is that if you are really concerned about the least well-off, then you've got to give them some kind of an entrance into.
Right. No. Well, I think.
The job market.
Just to defend numbers, I think looking at evidence and numbers and the results of policies is more important than looking at the intentions of those who instituted the policies.
Right.
So the good intentions of those who constructed the Great Society programs and argue for raising the minimum wage makes them feel really good about themselves, I suspect. And others feel good about that. But the evidence is that these policies tend to be extremely destructive to the very people that they're claiming to be helped. So, and
I want to really say the same thing about the drug war. So
no offense, but I think numbers are extremely important.
I think they're important too. I agree with you. I'm not offended. But as a good libertarian, I've got to get my dig in here on the drug war, right? Because I think that, and not just drug war, but all kinds of regulatory mechanisms, licensing, et cetera, we have just seen a sheer multiplication of laws. And so when we talk about a tension between the community and law enforcement, I want to throw up my hands and say, of course there's a tension between the community and law enforcement, because we are piling on the number of laws that need to be defended all the time, and they're getting pickier and pickier. And so if you're annoyed by them as a middle class person who can, fine, I've got to take my car here and get my license here and my exhaust pipe and this and my inspection, and you go through, and if I want to start a business, I've got to get this kind of licensing and this kind of training. And it's annoying and difficult for someone in our position. How impossible is it going to be for someone who does not maybe have a ton of educational background, who doesn't have weeks and weeks of income that they can live on while they're doing all of these trainings, et cetera. And so we don't think of them, they always sound like good ideas, all of these licenses and all of these requirements, these laws always sound like good ideas, but we forget what a burden they are on the least well-off in society. Middle-class people can deal with the annoyance, but
they forget, we don't forget.
Yeah, it's much more of an annoyance. It's much more than an annoyance, I think, for people in that position. And so we've seen that occur with the ticketing problem, where you have such a cycle of jailing and so forth occurring.
Well, it reminds me of the joke, the saying, it's, we're the government and we're here to help.
Right.
And it's a bit of sarcasm.
Yeah.
So thanks, it's been a fun discussion. And thank you for joining us on Free Exchange. Look for us on the interwebs. It's Hammond Institute. Use the Google machine and you'll find us in no time. Thanks.